All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's Ask an Expert session. My name is Shauna Thompson. I'm the Director of Mental Health and Wellness for Yorkville University and Toronto Film School. As I'm sure you're all aware, we have our Ask an Expert session happening today with an expert who will be speaking on a topic related to an area of interest that is meaningful for our students. So today we have with us Dr. Ron Hallman. He's a registered psychotherapist with the College of Ontario Psychotherapist, with a doctorate in psychology education from Capella University and certifications in drug, alcohol abuse, train the supervisor, and trauma debriefing. He has over 30 years of experience in providing support to individuals and groups in the workplace. Ron has worked alongside organizations to develop strategic plans for addiction and suicide prevention, and has served as the CEO of an organization providing care for youth in trouble with the law. Ron is a full-time professor and course lead with Yorkville University in our MACP, Master of Arts in Counseling Psychology program. So just as a reminder, you can all ask questions by selecting the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen. And now I am pleased to welcome Dr. Ron Hallman.
Thank you, Shauna, and it's just a real pleasure to be with you today. I was just looking for the expert to show up, but it's, I guess, me. So I want to share my presentation with you, hopefully be able to do that. So just give me a moment. I think that is it. Hopefully that is showing up for you. And so as Shauna said, we want to just take a few moments and consider building resilience against drugs and alcohol. So this is a little different for me. Normally I do a drug and alcohol seminar based on the actual, what are the drugs, what's the alcohol, what's research saying out there. But I'm going to do a little bit different slant. Because our population that I want to talk about are between the ages of 10, 11 to 19, 21. So I'm really talking about that adolescent age group today and understanding that age group. And as we understand that age group, I think one of the things that we realize is that life gets messy. And that's not always a positive place to start a seminar, but I'm going to dive right in. Life does get messy. And for some of us, online watching, that can be more adult, if you will. Life gets messy, so issues that as adults we might face. But some of the things that I think that age group, 10, 11-year-old up to 19, 21, online school has been different this year. Obviously, COVID way over there. I just stuck it on because I thought maybe that might be something that has made life a little bit messy. But there's a lot of other things. I think we've been so focused on COVID that we've lost sight of, there's online school, there's parents and going through separation or divorce, and there's blended family, and there's the addictions that might be going on within a family. There are family issues, social media issues, bullying. There's lots of things that I think this age group are experiencing that I just want us to kind of get in our minds. Life does get messy. And for many of this age group, it's not just that life gets messy, it's that we are developing our brains during this time. And so when we're first born to the age of 2, we know that that's the greatest development that we ever undergo, both in our brain and our bodies. The second greatest time that we actually develop in our brain is between the ages of 10, 11 up to the age of 21. So when I say develop, I literally mean develop. It's not that our brains are shaped. It's not that things are shaping us yet, even though that is happening, but they're actually being developed. The neurons, the centers, the hormones, things like that are not released until around the age of 11 or 12. So things are happening in this age group that are different for us. And so when we look at this age group, I think what we look at is, what informs the beliefs? What's going to inform our beliefs? Because as children, I think we grow up and we kind of embrace the beliefs of our family, whether it's mom, dad, aunt, uncle, siblings. That tends to be our nucleus. So we have our friends, but this age group as children, friends are friends. They're just people we play with. They're not people that we typically get our beliefs from yet. And our beliefs begin to become informed around the ages of 10, 11, around the ages when we begin to take notice of perhaps sitcom shows or social media or movies, or we are listening to what our friends are saying. What is advertising telling us? What's our past experiences now telling us? So as we grow up, it's during this age of adolescence that we begin to realize, boy, what my dad said or mom said, or what an uncle might have done, or people in our past, is when we were children, suddenly begin to impact us in our beliefs. We begin to get informed by our beliefs. And so, what do sitcom shows tell us? Well, they basically tell us that you can treat a person a certain way as entertainment, that we can watch that. We can actually watch sitcoms and they bully us. They bully each other. They make fun of certain characteristics. I think of Seinfeld and Frasier and those kinds of sitcom shows. I'm just dating myself there. Social media informs us. Movies inform us. They inform beliefs. We begin to develop beliefs that we're going to take into life. And interesting, here are just a couple of what I would consider things that inform us. Here's an advertisement that I picked up about a bottle of wine. And, yes, I will be your Valentine. Isn't that comforting? I will comfort you after a bad day. I will enable you to express your deepest emotions. I will make you feel like you're the most beautiful woman in the room. You can have me right now. Love this bottle of wine. This is actually a label. This is actually something that you can imagine an 11-year-old or a 14-year-old or a 17-year-old who's trying to figure themselves out and is feeling rejection and set aside by their society or their group right now. Here's something that's saying, I will comfort you. I will help you express your deepest emotion. I will actually make you feel different. I will actually make you a beautiful person. Isn't that interesting? Here's another one. Some of you might know the term football. Some of you might even know the term Super Bowl. It's what some people play in a sport. But all of you probably recognize the name Tom Brady. Here's a person at an age of 44, around there, who has won 7 Super Bowls, 7 championships in his life. Outstanding what he's done. Here's a headline from a newspaper. Tom Brady got sloshed during Bucks Super Bowl parade, and Twitter loved it. I'm not too concerned that, okay, Tom Brady partied. He's won 7 of these things. He's right up there in his field. And okay, he went to a party and he's partying. Lots of us have done that, particularly when we think back on our adolescence. We talked about in grade 11 and 12 how we were going to get bombed and not have our parents find out. It's what we did. My concern is the last part of this sentence, and Twitter loved it. So here's a group of people that, again, this age group watches. They go onto Twitter, and Twitter lights up, and they love the fact that Tom Brady got sloshed, that Tom Brady was drunk. And what does that inform these people? And I think we want to understand that to some degree. In fact, I think we really need to be a bit concerned about that. So let me suggest to you that there are 3 basic concepts to people, or 3 basic ingredients. If you were to bake a cake, you're going to need flour, you're going to need probably lots of brown sugar, and you're going to need eggs. And then there's some other stuff you might put in that cake. But we know that what your ingredients are made up of are these 3 basic things: a sense of belonging, a sense of power, and a sense of worth. These are what we would call the 3 basic ingredients or core concepts of being human. These are things that through this period of time, remember I said this is when we're developing. This is when we begin to develop a sense of belonging. When we begin to realize that as an individual, I'm going to separate myself a bit from my family, and now I'm going to become a person. I begin to see mom and dad as separate from me. I begin to take on what are my values and beliefs? What do I want to believe about life? And who do I belong to? We begin to put a lot more emphasis on friends and social media and my Twitter account and things like that. We begin to want to belong somewhere outside of perhaps the core family. And these core concepts really set in during this period of our life. And they become substantial as we move into our adult life. Then there's a sense of power and control. Who is in power and control? And many of us, if we have adolescents right now, and we're a little older, we know that when that child begins to be 9, 10, 11, we begin to sense this child pulling away from our control and our power. Some of you are probably laughing and think that happened when they were 3. I remember when my daughter was 3, one of the first things she said to us was, "I do it myself." That was enlightening. And so, we want power and control. We need power and control. And this is a core concept for us. And then there's a sense of worth. Where do I get my self-esteem from? And basically, we get our self-esteem from 2 places. Either what we believe other people believe about us, or what we believe about ourselves. That's typically where we get our sense of self-worth. What I think others believe about me, or where do I get what do I think about myself? So I want to talk just briefly about 3 myths that wrap themselves around these 3 concepts that have to do with drug and addiction, because that is what we're talking about. So the first one, the myth number 1, would be that drug and alcohol will give you a sense of belonging. And that's really what that picture of that bottle of wine is suggesting. It gives you a sense of belonging. You can belong to me. And we actually believe that a drug or alcohol will help build relationships. We believe that as we drink together, as we have this group partying together, or we have on the table little white dust that we're going to put up our nose, or we have needles that we're going to shoot into us, we actually believe that gives us a sense of belonging. And I want to suggest that that's a myth. I want to suggest that it does not actually produce a sense of belonging, but adolescents believe it will. And I think that's what we need to understand. If we're going to work with this age group, we need to understand that it's not talking about the drug and alcohol. You probably won't win that battle. It's talking about who do you want to belong to? Who do you want to have influence in your life? And who are you going to give that to? The second area that I want to look at is myth number 2, and that is that drugs and alcohol actually give us a sense of power. That is that I can drink and I can snort and I can do all of these things. I can smoke, a reefer or a joint of marijuana, and I won't lose control. Somehow I'm superhuman. Somehow this particular drug or alcohol doesn't impact me as a 14-year-old or an 18-year-old. And I want to suggest to you that that's wrong. It's one thing to say that's wrong, but how do you convince an adolescent that that's wrong? And it's going to be really, again, hard for you. They're going to find a website that says marijuana is not addictive because the website's likely selling marijuana. They're going to find a place or a friend who says, don't listen to that. That's ridiculous. I've been doing this for months and I'm not addicted. And so we actually believe that drug and alcohol is somehow going to establish a sense of power and control. And so to get away from talking about the drug and alcohol and talk to the youth about, where's your power and control? I can tell you that adolescents want power and control. They do not want someone else to control them. We know that as parents growing up, we know that as even friends. We know that they want power and control. So again, you want to ask them, how much power and control are you going to give the drug and alcohol? Because you're giving them something. You're giving this agent some sense of power and control, or you're giving your friends power and control. You have to give somebody power and control because power and control exists. You can't get rid of it in a relationship. You have to learn how to balance it, but you don't get rid of it. And so power and control becomes very, very paramount in this age group because, again, they're developing, they're recognizing how they have power and how they have control. They're beginning to see that they have impact on others, and others or agents such as drug and alcohol have an impact on them. And it's helping them to understand that. Or I can sober up quickly, within like minutes or within a half an hour. Alcohol stays in our body for somewhere around 2 hours, maybe 4 hours. But marijuana stays in our body for 10 to 30 days. It really depends on how much you are using. If you're an infrequent user, it might be, you might get away with 10 days. But if you're using 3 or 4 times a week, you're having a joint here or there, it stays in your body about 30 days, as well as other drugs do. And so again, you're giving up power and control to a drug or to an alcohol for a long period of time. And to talk to a young person about who do you want to control you, who do you want to have power in your life, can be powerful for them. The third one that I want to suggest, sorry. Now I got to figure out how to go back. There we go. The third one is a sense of worth. Where do we get our sense of worth from? And this is a huge one because, as I said, we get our sense of worth by what we believe about ourselves. But during this age group, they really get their sense of worth by what they think other people believe about them. And so once you're addicted, people believe there's no hope for you. So I've been using, I'm 12, I'm 14, I'm 17, now I'm 25, and I've been using a long time. That sense of worth becomes really worn down. And that's, I'm addicted. I have no hope. That's not true. You can build your sense of worth at any age group, at any time in your life. You can make a decision and work at your self-worth, and you can do that. And just as a side note, I think in our self-worth, about 1 in 10 people actually become addicted to marijuana. That's what different research tells us about this topic, just so you know. So what do I want to go from here? Well, I want to look at one of the books that I've enjoyed over the years, literally over the years, is Stephen R. Covey's book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. But I'm only going to take one thing out of that, and that is young people need a vision. It only needs to be a vision statement of perhaps 1 week, 2 weeks. You're not going to get a young person to really look at much of a vision beyond that. But what kind of person do I want to be when I put my head down on my pillow tonight? What do I want to look at when I do put my head down on my pillow tonight or the next morning? What do I want to look at as to where did I take my friends during this time in this event, whether it was a party or whatever I'm doing? What control did I give up? What did I belong to during this time? I had an 8-year-old come in, and he was a bully in a school. The school sent him in for counseling. So he's 8 years old. I had him develop a vision statement. Can you imagine? And this is what he said to me. I want to be a little boy, that's his terms. I want to be a little boy who treats people with kindness. So I saw him from time to time, and about 4 or 5 months went by. The reports were much better. He came in, and I said to him, let's say his name is Doug. I said, Doug, what did you do different over the past several months that you've gone from this issue of getting in a lot of trouble at school to you're not getting in much trouble, if any? And he reached in his pocket and he pulled out this crumpled little piece of paper, and he said, I read this every day. I want to be a little boy who is kind. I think we think too big when we think of vision statements for this age group. Just who do you want to be today? Who do you want to wake up and be tomorrow? I think that's what we're really looking at. And so how do we recover? Because I want to talk a little bit about recover. When we think about recovery in addiction, I think we think about the recovery stage and slipping and falling back. But I want to talk, what's your recovery? What's your ability to replenish and restore your own personal energy? How does this age group restore their basic health? How do they recover with sleep? How do they recover within their own body and getting rest? How do they recover through perhaps personal exercise or going to things like art or music, finding some form of recreation outside of drug and alcohol that would help them recover? One of the things that we know is that you're never going to be able to find anything, I don't think, in life that matches drug and alcohol. That is, I don't think you're going to find, painting a picture or singing a song that's going to give you a high like drug and alcohol does. And so we have to understand that in recovery, we're not trying to match. You can get the same experience over here as you do over there. No, you're not going to get a high. You're not going to get that excited as a drug or alcohol do, because it hits our neuron transmitters and makes our brain go, crazy with excitement. That's pretty hard to duplicate in any other form. But to recover, to find things that this person can begin to do outside of drug and alcohol, I think is important. The renewal, how do we channel our energy and inspire and stimulate ourselves? How do we do that within the groups of people that we want to belong to? How do you help this age group get in their minds, if you're going to be on the stage of life, are your friends pulling you up on that stage, or are they pulling you down to their level? Are you pulling people up onto the stage you want them to live at, or are you pulling them down to a level that's going to be destructive? And how do we get renewal? And then what are your habits? What are the things that you do on a day-to-day basis that I think form our habits? And I think those things help this age group. And then finally, something that I've taken from Amy Purdy. If you look up Amy Purdy in a TED Talk, Purdy is P-U-R-D-Y, Living Beyond Limits, a fantastic TED Talk that she gives. She went through a difficult time in her life and became resilient in that time. She says this within her talk, and I've pulled it out and I kind of help people with it. If your life was a story and you held the pen, what would you write? And I could give you story after story of 15, 16, 17-year-olds that I've asked this question to, and they've looked at me quite blankly and said, I don't know. Well, your life is a story, and you're going to put that pen in somebody's hand. What are they going to write? What are you going to write? Whose hand are you going to put it in? What substance are you going to put it in? What's the substance going to do? How's it going to write your story? So you're 14 now and you're going to be 16. What's the story going to say? You're 16 and you're going to be 18. And we can ask ourselves that, right? You hold the pen. I think that's the problem, is that we think other people hold the pen. We don't believe that we have control or power. And we do have control and power. And we can take that pen and we can begin to write our story. So who would you give the pen to? Or to what agent would you give the pen to? And I think those are the things that we want to do. So in summary, those are the things I wanted to share with you today. I hope that maybe there's one or two things that you pulled out of that and thought, that strikes home, or I'm going to use that as I work with other people or myself. But I leave you with this. If your life is a story and you're holding a pen, what are you going to write? Well, that's all, folks. I hope that that was helpful for you. And I think we'll turn it back over to Shauna, and if there are questions or things like that. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much for that presentation. So we do have a few questions. The first is referring to the language being used. So given the stigmatizing associations with the word addiction, is it not preferential as care providers to use less prejudicial language like substance use?
I think it is. I think our culture is moving toward, substance use as opposed to addiction. I get concerned, quite honestly, about softening some of our approach to some of these ideals. And one of the things that I think we're softening too much is the term addiction. I don't think people are addictive or addicted. I think there's an addiction to a substance or to gambling or to sex or something like that. There's something that is overcoming their life. There's something that is making a focus of their life. And for that, I guess I use the word addiction. Appreciate the question.
All right, thank you. Some other questions were related to the slides where you were talking about what informs beliefs. So right before you went into the myths, if you could please just review those points.
Sure. I think something informs our beliefs, right? We believe in a lot of things based, take COVID-19. We believe COVID-19 is serious because we're being told it's serious. Other people will say it's just the flu because they're being told it's just the flu. We do that off of research. We do that off of what the medical society are telling us. And so we believe what we believe because we're informed. We're informed somehow. A mother, a father, an aunt, an uncle, a school teacher, jumping off of a 10-foot wall informs us that I probably don't want to do that again. At least not at my age. Maybe when I was 10, I could survive. We're informed. So sitcom shows inform us. You'd be surprised how many people I say when I do let's say I do a seminar on harassment. You can't harass people on certain topics, but you watch a sitcom and they harass people on those topics often. It's what the sitcom is about. Just watch a Jerry Seinfeld program and how close you get to a person or their color. They make fun of those things a lot. You watch Fraser, if here's a psychiatrist and a psychologist known as Fraser. And what's the first thing they offer each other when they're under stress and pressure? Can I get you a drink? Could I mix you a drink? What would you like to drink? That's what they do. So you've got a 10-year-old or a 12-year-old or an 18-year-old sitting there and they're being informed by what they're watching. Say a thing about movies or friends or advertising or past experiences, those things inform us in what we believe.
All right, and someone has asked if you've used mindfulness with youth using substances.
I have. I have helped youth to become more mindful. What exactly, what are you doing and what would the consequence be? It's difficult for youth to grasp that. And again, it's because, when you think of us forming, our brains are forming. So one of the aspects of our brain is the frontal lobe. The frontal lobe is where we do all of our executive decision making. It's where we do all of our processing as far as, Y and X equals Z. That doesn't get formed. So you got to understand this. That doesn't get formed until we're 21, around that age, 21. So you can imagine we're asking 14-year-olds to make career decisions of what they're going to take in high school in grade 9. We're asking 16, 17-year-olds what they want to be when they become adults and university and college before they're 21. That's what we do in our culture. I'm not saying that's right or wrong. It's just what we do. And so I think, for us to understand the development of our brain helps us to understand those aspects. And so mindfulness, you have to be careful how you use it because you have to really be thorough in helping this young person. They might have to write consequences out. They might have to write what they want the consequence to be. So if you go to this party on Friday night, and if there are friends there, what do you want to read that you did on Saturday morning? Is there a place where you can go, a quiet place, a bathroom, you can shut the door and read it at 10:30 at night or 11 o'clock and then go and engage back into your party because they're going to forget. And so, but yes, I do use mindfulness.
And going back to addiction, someone has asked, can you say what you mean by addiction? For example, do you treat physical dependence the same as psychological dependence? Do you think dependence is the same as addiction?
If I could sum it up in a couple of sentences, addiction is anything in my world that captivates me so that whatever I'm doing, that is my end goal. So if I go to work and I earn money, it's so that I can buy my next fix. If I go to work and earn money, it's so that I can, go to a place and perhaps engage in some sexual behavior. It's something that has so occupied my life that I have set aside just about everything else that's important to me. When that occurs, I think we're suffering from addiction.
Thank you. Someone's asking about stonewalling. I tend to become frustrated when this occurs by youth. Are there any tips for different approaches or angles to put the sense of power back in their hands?
I think you can identify with them that what they're doing. You don't have to call it stonewalling, but I think you can say, like, right now, I'm saying this and you're saying that. I'm saying that and you're saying this. Everything I say, you seem to have an answer for it. And I think it's because you want control of this session. You want control of what I'm doing. I want to give you that control. So rather than me making these suggestions, I'm wondering, if this didn't exist in your life, how would it be different? If you weren't here in my counseling office because a parent said you're going to counseling, or a teacher said, or the school said this person needs counseling, what would be different? And give them control. Give them a sense of, okay, here's control. So I don't have to call it stonewalling, but because they won't understand that, or they'll get their defenses up. But try to give them the concept of, it's your problem, you solve it. I'll be here to guide and direct and help you through that as a coach. And I've used that expression with a lot of people that age group. You're not in counseling. I'm going to be your coach. I want to be a coach for you. And they seem to do that better. Or I'll go for a walk. Why don't we, nice day, why don't we go for a walk and chat rather than to sit here in this stuffy office? I just find that young people respond better outside of them feeling like, here's another adult telling me what to do.
Okay, and this is actually our last question. So from your perspective, what kind of supports do you think should exist for youth struggling with substance use? Should this come from schools, provincial healthcare, etc.?
Great question. One of the things I think it needs to come from is community, and however we want to identify that. So yeah, I think schools, I think different agencies, I think families who are engaged in a positive manner. I think just about anything we have in our community that can get around the table and say, how do we help with this issue, with this particular person or these particular people in this setting? I don't think it's just one area. I think we have to be collaborative in the way we think and begin to bring our society together and be unified in our approach in order to help curb where young people are being taught and where they're being informed from.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you for sharing your perspective as well as all of this information related to the topic. It seems like we've generated a fairly lively discussion. So I hope that all of the attendees were able to gain some new information based on our discussion here today. Thank you everyone for joining us. Please join us again next month as our Ask an Expert series continues. And once again, I'd just like to thank today's expert, Dr. Ron Hallman. Take care, everyone. Be safe.